Welcome back to Petroma Therapy. I am dehydrated. Dallas is in a heat wave. There's all kinds of flash flooding going on. The humidity is over 100%. People are awake in the middle of the night because at least it's not hot. But how are you?
Well, hi. Thank you very much for the introduction because the first step is always the hardest. I like when you ring the bell and say a few words to our listeners to greet them. I'm sitting in my car eating an apple. I think, is that what I'm eating? I mean, is that the forbidden fruit they say about in the Bible? And then I'm thinking, no, that was probably not. Or was it? Was it an
Yes,
apple?
yes, yes. Yes. So on our cover shot, we see a woman in a garden and she's picking a fruit. So in many different cultures, the fruit is used like in the Madonna and child paintings. There's usually a fruit in a lot of icons. There's usually a fruit in a lot of fairy tales. There is a fruit, and the apple has often been a classic symbol of the forbidden fruit. But I like to take Granny Smith apples. They're very, very crisp. And I like to saute them and cut them thin, saute them in butter, put a little bit of Grand Marnier or something like that on them, and then serve them over cold ice cream. So that is a very decadent dessert.
Well, I'm sure that sounds great, first of all, and it's also tasty. But yeah, whenever I eat an apple, I I somehow think that first of all it's very good to your health, very beneficial, because one apple a day keeps the doctors away. There is this expression that keeps the doctors away if thrown hard enough. But
Well,
anyway,
yeah. What fruit do you?
I'm thinking of a Bible. It's not. It could be in pineapple, or
No, you
we
wait a
call
minute. You can't
oranges
wait. Just
apelsines.
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Just wait a minute. Well, okay. So a pineapple you can't just bite into. You have to have a huge knife and cut off all the spiny growths. You have to cut off the top. Like you have to cut it into pieces. Like a pineapple is a lot of work. But I would like to just kind of have a shout out to the pineapple because it's a in the hotel and resort industry. The pineapple is the symbol of high hospitality and high class resorts. So those of you that are going on resort vacations this summer, you will notice pineapples, sometimes embedded in the logo or someplace in the resort. So the pineapple, you know, the pineapple is something that we're going to just put on the side and not really
But it
not really think
could
of it.
have been a forbidden fruit because the what's the Garden of Eden? It is a top-notch resort, quote
No,
unquote,
it's
and they could have
well,
eaten the pineapple, which could be
okay. Well, first, okay,
forbidden fruit.
you can pick up an apple and eat it. Like you're sitting in your car eating an apple. You cannot just sit in your car and eat a knife. You need an assistant. But the Garden of Eden is an archetypal story of God, you know, allowing man and woman to have the gift of life. And God said, in the Old Testament, which is recognized by, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, that the garden, every man has everything. He has his woman. He has these beautiful trees. He's wandering around naked. I mean, how do you feel about being a man wandering around naked with a beautiful woman? And you don't even.
That's the problem. That is the problem I'd like to address right now. Because if I were an Adam, in paradise, and there was Eve next. My physical need would be met, right? Each and every one of my physical needs would be met, but there wouldn't be any notion of a spiritual life, would be.
Well, you don't need a spiritual life because you're with Tina Fey, or you're with I would be with like Stevie Ray Vaughan, or I would be like the idea of paradise that it is a sort of place of complete happiness. But one of the things in the story of creation that I like is that supposedly Adam was sleeping. I love taking naps. I have a lot of friends. They love taking naps. And then there's also people like David Anton that'll say, like, I'll just sleep when I die. I want to live my life. I'm going to go bicycling. I want to go swimming. I want to go climbing. So, there's different needs that people have. So if you were in this garden of perfect bliss, let's call it bliss. Following your bliss is a phrase used by Joseph Campbell in The Power of Myth. So in this garden, there is sort of perfect bliss. And then God also planted a tree, and it is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And supposedly the story is man and woman, were encouraged not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. But God wanted man and woman to have free will. So even though there's like a sign on this tree of knowledge that says, do not eat, man had the choice. So when we face temptation, let's suppose you're married and you see a pretty girl at the coffee shop and you think, like, she is like so amazing, I would like to get her phone number. Or suppose I'm out dancing with some people and I know that the guy's married, but we're just dancing and he wants to buy me a beer. Is there anything wrong with me accepting a beer from a married man? Is that wrong? No, I'm serious. I know that
No,
he's
the
married.
culture is different. In your place, wherever it is you are,
Texas.
it may seem normal and socially approved, but in some other countries it would not be appropriate step to make,
Where?
right?
Where is it not appropriate
Like,
for? No, I'm just
I mean,
saying.
if I come up to some girl and offer her a drink, um, I don't know. I'm like,
You would be
never done
considered.
that before.
You would be considered creepy and weird.
No, it's just that
No one in Russia sees pretty
actually,
girls and
I'm
offers them
speechless. I'm
drinks.
kind of speechless. I never get to know any women I would like to be in a relationship with. I never start my relationship in the bar, right? Maybe it's just me. Maybe that's what the
No,
bar
I
are
mean
for.
it could be the
But I'm
bar.
kind of.
It could be at the museum. It could be at an art opening. It could be on a
But you
bicycle.
can't offer a drink in a museum. That's the
Yes, you can.
point.
There's drinks there. There's an open bar. You could the museums in Dallas and the
That would not be appropriate.
it's
Honestly, if you're in a museum, you offer somebody's drink, that you would be
I
considered a little off.
I love that. I've been to some amazing. They have these things called art crawls, like crawling like a baby crawls. You go from one museum to the from gallery to gallery to gallery, and every single one has like wine and cheese and grapes, and you're sort of standing around looking at the art, and everybody smells great and everybody looks great, and I have heard. I mean, you can meet the most amazing people at museums and then someone might say like, "Oh, I see that your drink is finished. Should we get another one?" And then I look at you and I say, well, yes. So we just walk over to the bar. Of course, it's all free. You don't have to pay for it. And it would be like paradise. Like, Adam and Eve didn't have to use cash. They didn't have to use credit cards. They didn't have to think about Bitcoins. They didn't have to think about like derivatives. They're just in the garden, hanging out, having fun. But God said, like, if you taste the forbidden fruit that is on this tree of knowledge, there could be some consequences. So, do you remember from the stories of the story of the body, eat of the forbidden fruit? What's the story? What do you remember about the story?
Well, I haven't personally read this part of a Bible, but somehow I'm trying to understand where did I get that from, but I definitely know what it's all about. Because Adam and Eve, they were in the garden of, what the garden was called?
Eden. Eden.
Yeah, that was in paradise, basically. And he slept, actually, that Adam slept, and Eve didn't. So she decided to try the fruit which was specifically forbidden by God. And I guess the serpent told her that's not a big deal. You can eat anything you want, like much more smarter than your husband or Adam. You know what? I've just remembered that there was another woman before Eve. It's called Lilith.
Lilith.
You ever knew that? In the Bible, maybe that's conspiracy, but Bible, they taken her out, basically, in the Bible.
Well, okay, there's different translations of the Bible, but let me just go back to, she's kind of the dark Eve. So let me just go back to the story of Adam and Eve, just the general story. So the general story is that Adam and Eve were kind of there, and maybe Adam was resting or leaning up against a tree. There's lots and lots of paintings of Adam and Eve in the garden. There's especially the Renaissance painters have so many depictions of what this was all about. And generally, there's like a serpent somewhere. The serpent could be a Lucis, is the medical symbol for healing, and it is a staff of life with two intertwining snakes. And I believe that one of our subscribers, Mr. Michael in Albuquerque, had made a very nice comment about the caduceus. So the snake being associated with knowledge and healing is also a universal symbol. So the story in the Bible, the Old Testament, is that the snake suggested to Eve, well, why don't you come over here and taste this fruit? Now remember, they're naked and Adam is resting. And, sometimes I think that there are sexual meanings to everything.
It wasn't like that in before time.
The snake suggested to Eve, come try this fruit. And then Eve took the fruit and then offered it to Adam. And she said, wow, let's taste this fruit. So, they were both kind of co-conspirators in the garden. Like a lot of patriarchy likes to say it's Eve's fault that we're fallen. We're in a fallen state. And before the fall is a time that's called pre-lapsarian bliss. Pre-lapsarian bliss. There's a whole bunch of literature written about pre-lapsarian bliss, about the beauty of life before women destroyed it. And Adam and Eve eat from the fruit, and then God looks down and says, whoa, you guys ate from the fruit. We got to have a consequence from you, because like I told you shouldn't go there. So the consequence of eating the fruit was that you were going naked and ashamed of your bodies, and we're going to put fig leaves over your private parts, and you're going to have to deal with shame. And also, when women bear children, it's going to be painful. And y'all go ahead and leave the Garden of Eden. Here's the gate, and you go into the world. So the Garden of Eden was a separate place, and heaven's a separate place, and the world is a separate place. So we live in the world, like you're in Moscow or you're in Boston or you're in Austin or Michael's in Albuquerque or Tony's in the, outside of London. I'm in Dallas. So in the real world, there's all these hospitals. So when a woman goes into labor, she goes to the hospital and, labors to give birth to a child, a newborn baby. And sometimes people just feel like being naked. So who go to nude beaches in France and in Italy, and they just enjoy being naked. But in, a lot of Western society, hanging out on the beach, being naked with your friends is considered perverted. Are there any like naked beaches in Russia?
Not that I know of. But from what you have just said, that made me think. Did you use that by the forbidden fruit? Because you said that it means sexual, seemed sexual to you. By the forbidden fruit, you consider this as a metaphor for sex. Is that right?
No, I'm saying the tree of knowledge is that one day this is the tree of knowledge. One, that pain is real, that suffering is real, and that one day you will die. And I consider a lot of literature about sex and death. Like sex is eros, life, and thanatos is death. So many works of literature are about the relationship of life and death. I'm not just like, I know that I mention the word sex a lot, but you're in therapy. I mean, we all want to be loved, and we wish we didn't get older, and we get new haircuts, we buy a new car, we like, a lot of women in Dallas get Botox, they get facelifts and, plastic surgery, and, death is real. And like, we are older now last year. How does that make you feel?
No, that makes me think, because I thought that what if Adam and Eve didn't taste the fruit of knowledge, didn't eat the fruit of knowledge, and then they wouldn't have left the Garden of Eden, and then Jesus wouldn't have come to this world, and then, I mean, I'm totally confused, because the bad thing seems to be like the good thing when you look at this from the other perspective.
Well, there are some people that literally, they are very literal in their translation and understanding of the Bible, that there was a real Garden of Eden, and there was like a real snake, and there was a real man named Adam, and there was this woman named Eve, and then they had these kids named Cain and Abel, and then Cain did different things, and Abel, like, some people believe that this is literal. Like, I have a grandfather. I have pictures of them. But there's also other people that say the Bible is written by humans, and it's metaphorical stories about what happened back in the past. So maybe there was a prototypical guy, way back then. I just think, to me, it's the story of the human condition. Like, we ask questions like, where did I come from? And like, why does my life suck? And like, how am I going to find love? So I would say the story of Adam and Eve is, for me, it's metaphysically real. It's spiritually real, because I do believe in God, and I do believe that God came into the world, and we are born in the world. We have spirit, and we also have flesh. So in Siberia or Berlin, or someone's born in Albuquerque, I was born in San Antonio. I was physically born in San Antonio, and my life has been in a lot of different cities. And so that, as we grow, we always have all these temptations. But I just think that God allows us to have free will. It's very complicated.
You see, that's why it's interesting to talk to the actual priest, because they've learned the Bible, and they preached it once they're out of their university. What's it called? Seminary. Yeah, and they know
But
a
see,
lot in
but see, they're
theology.
also humans. They're also humans. So, for example, there's different orders of priests. There's the Vincentians. There's the Jesuits. There's the Dominicans. It's it's kind of like different football teams. Like the Dominican priests are preachers. These are direct service to the poor. The Jesuits are the defender of the faith. So a man right now, women can be ordained in the Episcopal Church, in the Methodist, but like in the Catholic Church, women are still not ordained. But like suppose you decide to be a Jesuit, like that means you're like you're very, very intellectual, and you deliver high intellectual content sermons, and then there might be somebody else that is a Vincentian, and he's assigned to a parish in a very low socioeconomic area. Well, he's not going to give like high power lectures to a community of people, most of which don't have any formal education. So like when priests go to their parish, it's like when you go to a restaurant. There's some fancy restaurants, there's some just kind of dive restaurants that are fun to go to. Like, so not preaching the same sermon. The reading is set for the year. The readings are set. It's called the liturgical year. And the readings are set. But Father Don is going to deliver one sermon, and Father Mike is going to give another sermon, and Father Toshio is going to give another angle on the sermon. I think
listen them all and make our conclusions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love to hear Father Don preach because I'm an intellectual, and I loved all of his high-powered references. And then a lot of people at the parish, they would go like, well, why does he talk about all this stuff? We just want to know how to fix our lives. Like, we don't really want to think so much. And these people were genuine, honest Catholics who, when Father Don came to this parish, their response, what are you talking about? Like, we just want to know how we're doing, And if there's this one sermon, it's set. The liturgy is set for the year, and all the Catholic churches get the same liturgy, and so do the churches in France and in Italy and in Spain. The liturgy is set. So maybe people are hearing it in French or in German or Russian or Chinese, whatever. I just remember there's this one. I don't know if it's the Feast of Christ the King or if it's a different one, where the main thing you're talking about is Jesus talking to his disciples and asking them, who do you say that I am? And I remember I was sitting like in the fifth pew of the parish with my little notebook out because I like to take notes. And Father Don just stood at the pulpit, and he just kind of like looked out over the crowd. And he said, Jesus said, who do you say that I am? And then he paused uncomfortably long. People were squirming in the pews. And I just thought that was, then he delivered the sermon, but I just thought it was like a brilliant opening. Like, he asked us to think as Catholics and Christians, well, who do we say Jesus is? What do we believe? It was like this uncomfortable moment where people were fidgeting in the pews. It wasn't too long, but what an opener.
Do you have the Bible at home?
I got a bell. I got some water.
You don't have a Bible?
Yeah, I have Bibles. I have all kinds of Bibles. You didn't tell me I needed a Bible. What do you want me to look up?
What's the first word in it?
You mean Old Testament?
Well, the Bible includes Old Testament and the New Testament, right?
Yeah. Starts off with, don't you have a Bible in your car with you?
No.
Why not?
Why would I have a Bible in my car? I'm confused. Is that what you
Yeah,
have?
that's the same feeling I had. You go, do you have a Bible?
Yeah, at home. Because you're at home, not
Yes,
in
I
your
have a
class.
Bible. Yeah, I have
What's
a
the first
Bible.
word? I have an. Can you respond?
You know, there's different translations of the Bible. There's the King James Version. There's the New American Bible. There's the, you know,
Which
there's
one do you have?
hundreds and hundreds of Bible translations. There's hundreds of them.
Yeah, just read the first word from the one you have.
Okay, you know, I now have to go to my bookshelf and find my
Oh,
Bible.
it's out of reach. I didn't know
It is
that. I
not
thought.
hard to reach. It is not hard to reach. There's nothing that is difficult other than talking to you.
Fear not.
No.
What they say, angels say. Fear not. It's not helping.
Gosh. Golly. Where's my book? Here's Anna Karenina. Okay, here is the 7-Story Mountain. I don't even have my glasses on. Here's
I wonder if there are how many people out there who have read the entire Bible. Sure that you did that, but
there's tons of people. There's Bible studies at every single Catholic church. They just read it and they discuss it. There's groups. There's like, you know, it's like, you know, like gyms. You go to the gym and work out. There's like Bible studies all over. There's gyms all over. I love this book. It's called The Sacrament of the Present Moment. What if we go with that book instead?
read the first word out of it.
Okay, The Sacrament of the Present Moment was written by Jean-Pierre de Caussade, and it was translated by Kitty Muggeridge, and it was originally called Self-Abandonment to Divine Providence. So this guy, de Caussade, was the spiritual director of these nuns. It is a mystical treatise. Wow. So the story, this starts off, the first page, well, there's a preface. Okay, it says that you must try to read this with your heart. Okay, let's see. De Caussade's prayer for the state of abandonment. Oh my God, when will it please thee to grant me the favor of living always in that union of my will with thy heavenly will?
Well, that seems harmless enough.
Harmless?
Harmless. I mean, the line you just read, that.
Yeah, he says,
okay.
when will it? When, which means the person is still working on it, trying to get his life aligned with a heavenly will. So God desires for us to be in a state of grace. God desires us to be in a state of bliss. God desires us to be free from suffering. And you know, we're just kind of working it out here on earth. Yeah, I like this guy. It was really, really interesting how I got this book. It was so weird. It was more spooky. It's another spooky thing. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Are you afraid?
I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was in Houston and I was driving around, and I think I was teaching at Duchesne Academy of the Sacred Heart. It was a girls' school, very rich girls' school in Memorial. And might have been the summer, and my daughters were off on summer vacation with their dad. I think they went to Stockholm or Turkey or someplace. So I'm there. It's the summer, so I'm by myself. I'm in my car. It's like hot because it's Houston. And I'm just driving down Memorial Drive. And I'm going home. And then I get this feeling, this, like, I call it infused knowledge, this feeling. Drive over to the cenacle, the Cenacle. Cenacle is the upper room where Mary and the disciples met after the crucifixion. So that they're up there like hanging out, waiting for Jesus to come back, because that's what he said he was going to do. So the Sisters of the Cenacle, it's a retreat center. It's a beautiful wooded area that has peacocks wandering around, and you can go there for workshops, and they have rooms that you can stay in, and that you can do Tai Chi there, and you can go on retreat there. So it's a beautiful retreat center. And I used to be on a volunteer on staff there, and I was doing like some art therapy and journal therapy, like doing some little workshops on art therapy and journal therapy. So I was familiar with the place. So I was just going to drop by and look at their library. And they have a very interesting, they have a very good library. And then they have a bookstore. And it's very interesting because there's no cashier there. There's a little box and you can take your book and the book says $14 and you're supposed to put your money in this box. So you have the opportunity to steal the book. It's interesting because I found that so interesting. This little bookstore that has, books on the lives of the saints and books on meditation and books on family prayer, like just a lot of really nice books. And there's like a little box where you're supposed to put your money. And then, so anyhow, I got this feeling to go to the Cenacle and browse the bookstore. And I thought, well, okay, I could do that. So I pull up to the Cenacle and I park, and I notice the parking lot is empty, and there's usually 8 or 9 cars. And I see a sign on the door that says closed, which they might have been having some repairs or something, but the sign on the door said closed. And then I had this feeling, open the door. And I kept arguing with myself like, that's dumb because the sign says closed. But I went ahead and followed what I call promptings of the spirit. And I opened the door and I walked in. So there's the beautiful reception area. No one's there. Air conditioning is on. I'm looking around thinking like, well, where are all the people? Like there's usually people here. And then I decide, well, just go to the bookstore. So I go to the bookstore and there's certain books that I look for that I like. I like certain books. And I just suddenly saw this book, The Sacrament of the Present Moment. And I just saw it and I had this feeling, like pick the book up. And I thought, I don't know what it cost. How much does it cost? $7.95. It cost $8, but this was maybe 12 years ago. It cost $8. And I looked through my purse and I think I had $4 of cash. And I kept thinking, well, I don't even have $8. I have $4. Then I kind of felt like God was telling me, well, just take the book. You can come back and give the other money later. I kept thinking like, well, I think I'm stealing. And then I thought, no, I'm not stealing. I mean, besides, like, there's no one here. And so I put the $4 in there. And then I got this feeling like, well, just go ahead and leave. And I kept thinking like, this is like the weirdest thing. There's nobody here. So I just held onto the book and just kind of like looked around, just walked out. There was no one there, got back in my car and just came home. Later, I returned several days later and paid the other amount. But I'm saying that's how I got the book. I feel that God wanted me to read this book.
Well, thanks for sharing, of course. And let me say amen, because that's the last word in the Bible. The last word in the Bible is amen. And also, do you mind if we wrap it up right here? Because that story is wonderful. I think there's nothing more to say left.
Well, amen. And adios.